Standard thing, questions in the chat if you have them. Otherwise, we'll have space for them at the end. We do want to talk to you at the end about the last webinar, but also what we're going to do afterwards. Get any thoughts on that? So do you want to? Should we just go straight through to the next slide, Rav?
Yeah.
Okay. So Rav and I are going to split this one today. So we've talked so far in quite a lot of detail about how do you start and create a data governance capability, how do you kind of make the case for it, how do you manage your stakeholders, how do you know where to start, how do you keep it going, how do you scale it up, what kind of things can go wrong. What we haven't talked about is tooling, and tooling really comes in a variety of kind of themes when you're thinking about data governance. You've got some stuff that's around data quality. So what you may have kind of traditionally called like a profiling tools, so tools that look at very large data sets and tell you what's wrong with them. And then you've kind of got data governance tools, which are more around the management of the operating model, so more kind of workflow tools. And you may at your university have some of these for some other things. So Alteryx can be kind of used for some of this. But generally, data governance tooling is not something that's very high on people's budgets. And it's certainly not very high at the moment. So there are a number of institutions, some of them are on this call, that have got some of the sort of premier products, so products from Experian, like Aperture. I think we have somebody with Calibra, which is the very high-end data governance product. Some people may have Talend, some people may have some Infosita, some other of those kind of products. We're not going to talk about that today. We don't really think that that's a kind of place you want to start. We wouldn't suggest that you start by buying an expensive tool. And secondly, we don't think it's a realistic ask at the moment when you're starting small and there's always so much pressure on budgets. So we want to talk to you about the kind of tooling that you can develop yourself, and that's really moved on a lot since the last few years with kind of the tools that are available for free around the Microsoft suite, and we've got a few of those to show you from a couple of universities. Anything to add to that, Rav?
No. Should we price in?
Let's crack on. All right.
Okay. Right.
All right. Are you this one? You're doing this one. Go for it. Sorry.
I'm doing this one. Yeah. Right. Okay. Alex, can I leave you to admit any people waiting in the lobby? Okay. So this is just a kind of a quick it's a bit of an analogy of what we can look at in terms of the DG profile. So we've taken the image of a theatre production here. You can see here we have the front stage, which is what all of the customers would see. So that's people across an institution. We have backstage, and that is the framework itself. So everybody put in accountable roles, for example, all the remediation efforts, all of the data governance boards, etc., etc. And then we have behind the scenes, and that is the data governance team or manager themselves that actually create all the resources that are needed for both backstage and front stage. So using that analogy, we have both the front facing, which is what everybody in the institution will see, and the inward facing, which is what the framework would see. So taking what faces inward first, so it's a little bit counterintuitive, but if we start on the right hand side of the diagram, these are the tools that are needed to enable the framework to operate in the way that it needs to. So if we take a step back and think, we've got people in roles that are accountable for data within their domain, and we've got a number of data quality indicators around critical data. That's not the only thing that people need for their roles to be successful. They need to know what issues the institution are facing in terms of data. So they need to have view of a data quality issues log. So that is just a master record of everything that anybody in the institution can submit an issue to. And then there's some management of that. So it's prioritizing what issues are there, allocating resource to manage the remediation of those prioritized issues, for example. So there needs to be a tool that is the back end of the outward facing version of this that would enable accountable officers to be able to proactively manage the data in their area. So that gives them some direction as to what they need to do in terms of quality assuring and or fixing bigger data issues. There is then a data glossary. So a data glossary is just essentially a centralized resource to make sure everybody's using the same understanding and terminology around some of what can be quite complicated in HE terminology and or acronyms. So the classic one I always use is student. There'll probably be 1,001 definitions of student dependent on who you speak to. So, you know, it's about making sure that we have one version of the definition for what these terms mean. So when I say one definition, it doesn't mean that a student just has one version of what a student is, but is being much more detailed around what types of students there are and what types of definitions fit each of those types. So as much as the outward facing looks at the data within the glossary, it's up to the people in the framework to manage that glossary. So it's up to accountable roles to approve definitions and to amend them, and to go through an annual, for example, cycle for managing, reviewing and updating those terms. So there has to be processes in place there. And the only way to do that is to have proper tooling to be able to, again, point those roles in the right direction. We then have more of the hands-on kind of tangible tools, and that's around reporting. So as much as people can be guided by what data quality markers they need to be running from the DQuil, they also need to know what the state of their domain is. So that's where steward and owner dashboards are really powerful. Again, it enables and helps those people in those roles be successful in what they're trying to achieve in managing their data. So that is all built from behind the scenes, from the data governance function. And it's not then stopped at that backstage place. It's also then a case that we don't just want to keep this behind the scenes for the framework to use in isolation. The power comes when the whole institution has a view of what is going on with these tools in the background. So it's not a case that they would influence or add to the way that these things are managed and prioritize, but it is the case that they need to be able to, one, have a look at what the glossary says and what terms are in there, query anything that they don't agree with and or challenge, but also raise items to be added to the glossary. They also should have access to the data quality issues log, so that if there is anything that comes in from across the institution, people know where to submit those issues, so that they know and have some confidence that that is going to be escalated to the right areas who are looking at proactively managing their data. But that is all only possible if there's a presence and a platform for data governance itself. So I always describe it as a shop window. So there needs to be a shop window for all of these things to be promoted and to be housed, but also for people across the institution to be able to engage and interact with the capability. So there's a lot there in terms of tooling, and you can see the level of skill set that something like this would cover. Not necessarily the case that data governance teams and or managers need to have the skills, but it's about having access to the skills, because there is some technicality there needed. There will be some access permission needed. There will be dashboards potentially that need to be created. There's probably some simple automation and routine building, etc., that's needed. And this is all in the view of starting the capability, as Alex said, without a big budget and a big system. So that is a very kind of whistle-stop tour of some of the tools that are needed in order to begin a data governance capability. Is there anything I've missed, Alex? Oh, Alex, you're on mute. Sorry, I didn't notice that.
I'll put myself on mute while I was typing. So the shopfront thing is a lot of stuff's done in Excel, which is fine when you get going, but actually things like the business glossary and to a lesser extent the quality log are things that are kind of the face of data governance. They're the way that people engage with it, they're where they see the value of it. So if that's difficult for people to access, like they've got to go into a spreadsheet or something, that's really going to kind of sort of denude the offer a little bit. So I think having the ability to kind of present this stuff front of house in a way that people can engage with it is kind of really, really important. DQual is data quality issue log. Sorry, Morag. So your list of issues that you're collecting, so you would collect what the issue's called, description of it, the impact of it, which domain's it in, who's the steward, when's it going to be fixed, who's going to fix it, that kind of stuff. We've got some really simple templates. We're just talking about that. We can probably provide some of those on the website as well. So let's have a look at what that might look like. And these are real images from a couple of universities. So these have come from Bath, from King's College. And these are things that have been developed. In the case of Bath, I don't think Steph's on the call today. I think she's doing her MBA stuff. But this is stuff that Steph's built herself with a little bit of sort of help from other people in the university. But she's not gone out and had a project for this. She's not gone away and said, this is I need people to help me develop this. She's kind of self-started and learned herself to do this stuff using very simple stuff based on Power Apps and all this kind of stuff. And again, I know Steph would be happy to talk to anybody about what she's done and explain how she's done it. But there you can see on the left-hand side, that's a really kind of simple but very useful couple of things. One's the glossary, and one's a thing that actually came out of King's, and then I think King's were good enough to share with Steph what they've done, and then we've added an acronym lookup. So two things there that would, people would engage with and would really feel that there's something, a capability, a service that they can access that they couldn't access before. Well, I'm going to let you talk about the King's one because you know it way better than me.
Yep, I think Ellie's on the call. So Ellie was kind of instrumental in getting this done. But this was something that was already in place. So it was about connecting with the right people to use a functionality which met the need of the data glossary. And then there was a lot of work in trying to connect the processes as well to make sure that there was nothing falling through the gaps, because obviously something that goes through an acronym checker might need to go to one area, whereas data governance items need to come to another. So there'd been a lot of collaboration here. And what I think is a really good example is you do not necessarily have to start from scratch. Have a look at what might already exist in the institution. Have a look where that offering matches what you need to offer, and connect wherever you can to bring those skills into play and to be able to build things like this. But as you can see, it's really user friendly, and people go to one place to be able to do what they need to do. And that in turn does create a more of a promotional stance for data governance as well, because it's in a bigger tool that a wider staff group can see and access and know about.
Yes, so they're kind of glossary ones. So they're the ones that we talked about, the facing of the glossary. We haven't got a DQual one, but we do have some other ones to show you as well, which we're going to show you here. So again, these two are from Steph, from Bath. And again, these are kind of the owner and the data dashboard. So that I'm not kind of going into the details, but I think I'll have to check with Steph how she's built these. She may have had a little bit of help with these, can't remember. But they are, again, they've got a lookup. So they're kind of one of the backs for the steward. It's kind of allowing them to look up their issues. It's kind of working out what's assigned to them. So it's like Rav was saying, kind of encouraging the stewards to do the right thing, giving them workflows, don't send them emails, actually give them something they can use, they can look at, they can update, they can kind of have their own agency around what they're fixing. But then that coming back, and you can see the domain view, which is kind of your data owner's view there. And again, I'm not going to kind of get into all of the stuff in it. This is like based on some dummy data. But it's got some stuff about what coverage have we got in terms of, what entities have we got covered? What have we got in terms of stewards? How much do our stewards cover all of our entities, all of our attributes? How are glossary definitions against that? What's our retention going on? All that kind of stuff about compliance on there. And then behind these, there's some other stuff as well. And then there's some, there's a bit of automation that allows you to do some other things. I know that quick one as well, we don't have an example, but down at Solent, Debbie Carlos has been doing stuff, really good stuff, where when something changes, like reference data, I think for them it's names of departments, names of rooms, then it gets sent out to all the people that might be interested, so we don't get these kind of unreconciled data sets. So there's lots of different things you can do with a sort of anything from kind of a very low level of skill to be able to potentially partner with all other parts of the university that have kind of more capability. But this stuff is definitely all doable, and I think it's something that's often not considered. And I think when you're trying to show the capability that you can produce with governance to all the staff, but also to kind of get people to buy into it who are in the framework, the owners and stewards, this does make quite a big difference in our view. Anything to add to that, Ralph?
Yeah, I would just expand on that last point because I think a lot of people find it difficult to really grasp and understand what data governance is and what it means,
True. Yeah.
whether they're people in the wider institution or whether they are roles that have been nominated as part of the accountability framework. So having something tangible like this really makes people understand it more. The path is easier. And it's all part and parcel of the same old kind of tune that we've sung throughout these webinars, which is communication and platform. And these are really nice tools to be able to communicate the benefit of data governance and show people the impact that they're having. To have something visual like this is really powerful.
Yeah. So now we promised you a guest speaker. We must remember to unmute Laura, Ralph. So there's some work going on with some work with JISC that's working on some data management toolkits for the sector. We thought it'd be a good time to bring it in. It's quite early days, but Laura is going to just kind of give you an idea of a free tool that fits quite well in. So over to you, Laura.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody can hear me. It looks like my mic's on. Hi everybody. You might not have noticed, but I've actually been sneaking in the background of these sessions for the last few weeks. My name's Laura Lawrence and I'm one of the lead trainers on the HESA training team at JISC. So as Alex said, we as JISC have been collaborating with Rav and Alex to create a new toolkit. Now this toolkit, it's important to say, is going to be free and it is going to be optional. This is not something that everybody now has to use, but it's something that we're creating because we believe that it's going to be really helpful to everybody. So it's called the Student Data Assurance Toolkit, as you can see on screen. And the idea is that you can use it to quality assure your data in readiness for your student return. So some of you may have already spotted and may in fact be signed up, but we are doing a webinar in a couple of weeks to sort of kick off the project, tell everybody about it. So that is on a couple of Tuesdays' time, on Tuesday the 25th, and I can pop a link to it in the chat in a moment if anybody's curious to join. So we've been busying away behind the scenes to do all the development, all the work on this. And we are currently assembling a small group of pilot providers to work with us, because a really big part of this project is that we are really genuinely keen to hear what everybody thinks, hear how this could work for everybody. So we are going to go out to the people and ask, and we will do that through our webinars that we deliver as well and through other communication means. So that's where we're at the moment. At the point at which we do our webinar in a couple of weeks, we're going to release a survey, again, to ask everybody's thoughts, sort of context you're sitting in, how a toolkit such as this might help, and then we will release our other webinar dates. Because the idea is that at the end of April, we will run a masterclass to sort of properly show you the toolkit, talk about how it can help, and then in May, we're going to deliver a series of clinics, and that will be where we dive further into the toolkit, take you through specific scenarios. You'll notice if you attend any of these webinars that we're going to be asking you, for example, about particular student fields that have been challenging, and we will try to incorporate those in our demonstrations as well. So it's very much going to be a back and forth in terms of communication, between us and the sector, because as I said, we really want to make this as helpful as it can be to everyone. And as you can also spot on here as well, we've got our student post collections that are running through March and April. We'll also talk about the toolkit a little bit then for those joining. And my colleague Rachel is going to be delivering a session at Schrock, again, talking about the toolkit. So we've got lots of engagements for everybody to find out what we're doing. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled because it's all happening. It's all coming. And, if anybody's got any questions, obviously you've got Rav and Alex's contact details, but you can ping any questions our way to training at HESA, and I'll pop those details in the chat as well. I think that covers everything, Alex and Rav.
That's fab, Laura. Thank
Great.
you.
That's okay.
So we're not going to show you big chunks of it now because it's probably early dev, but we wanted to talk about it because it's a free tool and it does fit well into the stuff with governance. So for example, it kind of auto generates some stuff around data quality logs. It's going to have some stuff around validation and stuff that will be very familiar to anybody working in data governance. So we're keen for groups like this to give us some feedback, even if you're not like a HESA compiler, but also we think that there's value in it I think it'll give you some good thoughts about how you might be able to use that, extend it in your own environment. because we're going to do a lot of the work for you. So we can give you something and then you can just kind of use it and you don't have to build it yourself. So that's kind of where we're at. Anything else to add in the toolkit, Rav?
No,
Cool.
just keep your eye out on dates and
Yay!
engage wherever you can.
Yeah, I think Laura's just looking for the link. I did think I had it, but for some reason I can't find it. So
It's all right. I'm typing as we speak.
excellent. Thanks, Laura. All right. So again, a whistle-stop tour around tooling. We have some questions for you. Rav.
We have some questions. The traditional survey / activity that we put into these webinars at the end of each one. I've just popped in a link to the form for you to answer. Again, I'll say the same thing. These are optional to respond to. There is an area to put your email address in if you want to have your personalised journey sent back to you after the webinar, but there will be another opportunity to do that probably post webinars when we're thinking about a panel version, just to close everything up. But what we want to collect this time is how you feel about the tooling. So the first question is about assessing how each of the tools that we've just described to you would be included within any capability rollout within your institution. And then the same question for the inward tools, so those tools that are used by the framework themselves. And then the third question, which is most important, is about you assessing whether you are ready to go in terms of skill set and or access to the relevant skills to be able to build these tools. And like Alex said, it's not necessarily that you have to have, the absolute perfect technical solution. It might be building things in Excel, might be a combination of Power Apps, or it might be other things. But there are a few options there for you to be able to assess where you think you are in terms of starting position to get some of those tools in place.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll leave that form open. So please do go ahead and submit your responses, and we'll analyse them as always and post the results on LinkedIn. They've been really interesting so far. So really appreciate everybody feeding back. But that we are a little over, but we're not as over as I thought we would be.
No. So yeah, so we're coming to the end. We're going to do next week. We're going to finish on a high. So we're going to talk about kind of what does good look like. Give you some examples of kind of what a mature embedded framework would look like, both kind of operationally and from engaging with projects kind of way. Give you some thoughts on that. And then we're going to, I think, probably present you with a couple of options around whether or not you'd like to have summarize this, whether you want a panel, if there's anything you want. We talked about doing some deep dives on some other stuff, and get your thoughts and maybe get some final thoughts from you. I think our vote might be how confident you feel at the start, how confident you feel at the end, that we can tell whether these sessions have been worth your while. The sort of next steps is probably we're going to try and do some of the stuff really quickly just to kind of close it out, and then we're kind of really busy, so we probably won't get to some other stuff until maybe in the summer, but we're definitely interested in hearing other things that we could do to help. We've certainly enjoyed doing these sessions and we definitely want to do some more of them. It's just going to be a question of fitting them in with other work. So yeah, that will be us next week, so we hope to see you then. Anything to add, Rav?
No, I can't. I've said it so many times, but I can't believe how quickly
I know.
10 of 10 already next week. But thank you to everybody who's kind of stuck with us. And again, we will make sure that we circulate all the links and everything post webinar 10, and there will be further information on the panels that we're going to be setting up. So there is a little bit more. We're not quite at the end yet, which is a good thing. But just a reminder here that we've got the suggested reading list 2, and highlighted there is the one that probably is most useful for you immediately. I think Alex told us about this one last week, didn't you, Alex? Telling Your Data Story by Scott Taylor. But other than that, we have come to the end. So thank you very much again. As usual, we are more than happy to stay on if anybody has any questions or comments. But if not, we hope to see you next week.
We do.